considering the difficulties of transportation, they were quite communal. I mean, back in my grandfather's day, he played on the Western Canadian polo team with the Kerfoots, who long history in the Cochrane area. W.D. Kerfoot was the original foreman on the Cochrane Ranch. Wooly Dodds, a number of other people, and they played polo, and they go to Cochrane play polo. And again, in my grandfather's day, the Cochrane races were a big deal, and the CPR would put on a special train that would bring spectators out from Calgary to Cochrane for the races, and my grandfather rode horses in various races, and it was very much a community event. And of course, polo is long gone around here, at least. Rodeo sort of took over from that, and people would go to the local rodeos, largely just as an excuse to visit with each other. But in the earlier days, I'm talking my earlier days, when in the 50s, 60s, 70s, the ranches all worked together at branding time, and we still do today. So there would be 8 or 10 ranches around that would all drop whatever they're doing and come to help brand, and we would do the same. So there, and then after, of course, a long winter, after very busy time in calving time, which is sort of 7 days a week for 6 weeks or so, getting out to a branding was very much a social event as well as a work event, and to get out and visit with your neighbors and see their livestock and help them, and and of course the ranches, the hosting ranch always puts on a big feed and has plenty to eat and to drink, and everybody have a big time at that. A lot of the social stuff revolved around the schools as well. The Beaupre School became, after it was closed, became a community center, and so much of the stuff as today revolved around what are the kids doing, you know, are we going to whatever sport they're involved with, and various track meets and stuff like that. And of course, once we got into the 50s, transportation became a little easier. Everybody had an old car, an old pickup truck or something, and could move around. And of course, in my dad's day, as I mentioned, he trailed the cattle back to Conrich to winter at the farm until he had enough land broke here he could grow feed. And in those days, if you didn't grow feed, you didn't have feed. So, you know, again, we were on land that's so poor that nobody else wanted it, more in the context of farming than ranching particularly. But Dad got enough land broke, and Mom's dad got enough land broke that they could grow some feed and winter the cattle here. Nowadays, it's so much easier to move feed. You just pick up the phone, in comes a semi-load, and you know, you get the privilege of paying for it, but in it comes, it's easy to do. So, yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of changes in the cattle industry over the years, but you know, in the early years, it was very much just a battle for survival. If you can imagine rather poor insulation of the day, it didn't occur to anybody to insulate the roof of their log house. They had to cut firewood, and in some cases buy coal in town at because the CPR would bring it in by the carload. I saw a diary my mother had kept as a teenager at one time, and in the wintertime, she talked about every third day, Laurie would take a team and sleigh into the bush and cut a whole sleigh load of dry wood and bring it out. So that would be one full day's work. Then that all had to be bucked up and split. And so surviving the winter was very much a issue of survival. It was get the livestock fed and keep warm. And of course, it's so much easier now. We don't even think of that. But it was a different life back then.